Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Va, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopijana Vallabha, Jayo Girivaradari, Jayo Girivaradari, Jaya Gopijana, Jayo Varadhari, Jaya Gopijana Vallabha, Jayo Girivaradari, Jayo Girivaradari, Jaya Jaya Yashodanandana, Jayo Brajajana Ranjana, Jayo Yasodanandana, Jayo Yashodanandana, Jayo Brajajana Ranjana, Jayo Yasodandana, Jayo Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jaya Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Radha, Radha Nata, Radha, Radha Nata, Radhe. Jaya Radha, Radha Nata, Radha, Radha Nata, Radhe. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Shri Radharani ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanande. No, I'm good. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading from the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading from chapter number 6 and text number 39. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And if we could all say some prayers together. Om Jnana Tinimandasya Ginangina Salakya Shakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapsha Kanchana Ghorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Surubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to give class this morning. Arjun Prabhu, Sarv Damodar Prabhu. So we're going to be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. from the 4th canto, chapter number 6. Everyone's got the sheets, right? Tam Brahma Nirvana Smadim Asritam Viyupasritam Kirisham Yoga Kaksham Saloka Pala Munayo Manunam Adya Munam Pranjalaya Pranamu Tan Brahma Nirvana Samadim Asritam Viyupasritam Girisham Yoga Kaksham Shaloka Palamunayo Manunam Adyamanam Pranjalaya Pranamu Tan Brahma Nirvana Samadim Asritam Viyupashitam Girisham Yoga Kaksham Saloka Pala Munayo Manunam Adyamanum Pranjalaya Pranamu Tam Brahma Nirvana Samidam Asritam Pranamu Tan Brahma Nirvana Samidam Asritam Viyupashritam Girisham Yoga Kaksham Saloka Palamunayo Manunam Adyamanum Prajalaya Pranamu Tam Brahma Nirvana Samidam Asritam Viyupashitam Girisham Yoga Kaksham Saloka Palamunayo Manunam Adyamanam Pranjalaya Pranamu Tam Brahma Nirvana Sandim Asritam Viyupashritam Girisham Yoga Kaksham Saloka Palamunayo Manunam Adyamanum Pranjalaya Pranamu Tam, him, Lord Shiva. Brahma Nirvana in Brahmananda. In Brahmananda. Samadhim in trance. Asritam absorbed. Viyupashritam leaning on. Girisham Lord Shiva, Yoga Kaksham, having his left knee firmly fixed with a knotted cloth. Sa Lokapala, along with the demigods, headed by Lord Indra. Munaya, the sages. Manunam, of all thinkers. Adyam, the chief. Manum, thinker. Pranjalaya, with folded palms. Pranemu, offered respectful obeisances. Translation. All the sages and demigods, headed by Indra, offered their respectful obeisances unto Lord Shiva with folded hands. Lord Shiva was dressed in saffron garments and absorbed in trance, thus appearing to be the foremost of all sages. So you can repeat. All the sages and demigods, headed by Indra, offered their respectful obeisances unto Lord Shiva with folded hands. Lord Shiva was dressed in saffron garments and absorbed in trance, thus appearing to be the foremost of all sages. So we'll read the purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So in this verse, the word Brahmananda is significant. This Brahmananda, or Brahma Nirvana, is explained by Prahlad Maharaj. When one is completely absorbed in Adyokshaja, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the sense of perception of materialistic persons, one is situated in Brahmananda. It is possible to conceive the existence of, it is impossible to conceive of the existence, name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he is transcendently situated beyond the conception of materialistic persons. Because materialists cannot imagine or conceive of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they may think that God is dead. But factually, he is always existing in his Satchidananda Vigraha, his eternal form. Constant meditation concentrated on the form of the Lord is called samadhi, ecstasy, or trance. Samadhi means particularly concentrated attention. So one who has achieved the qualification of always meditating on the personality of Godhead is to be understood to be always in trance and enjoying Brahma Nirvana or Brahmananda. Lord Shiva exhibited these symptoms, and therefore it is stated that he was absorbed in Brahmananda. Another significant word is Yoga Kaksham. Yoga Kaksha is a sitting position in which the left thigh is fixed under one's tightly knotted saffron-colored garment. Also, the words Manunam, Adyam are significant here because they mean a philosopher or one who is thoughtful and can think very nicely. Such a man is called Manu. Lord Shiva is described in this verse as the chief of all thinkers. Lord Shiva, of course, does not engage in useless mental speculation, but as stated in the previous verse, he is always thoughtful regarding how to deliver the demons from their fallen condition of life. It is said that during the advent of Lord Chaitanya, Sadashiva appeared as Advaita Charya, or Advaita Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu's chief concern was to elevate the fallen conditioned souls to the platform of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Since people were engaged in useless occupations which would continue their material existence, Lord Shiva, in the form of Lord Advaita, appealed to the Supreme Lord to appear as Lord Chaitanya to deliver these illusioned souls. Actually, Lord Chaitanya appeared on the request of Lord Advaita. Similarly, Lord Shiva has a sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya. He's always thinking about the deliverance of the fallen souls as exhibited by Lord Advaita Prabhu. So this is, as you know, it's a continuation of where we were yesterday. And where we were yesterday was where there's descriptions now about Lord Shiva. And preceding this, it was the journey, as Mataji had pointed out. It is the journey to this particular point of where Lord Shiva is now situated under this tree. And Lord Shiva is in deep meditation. Actually, deep, he's at the point of what one would say in terms of Astanga Yoga, at the point of perfection. He's in Samadhi. And he's full absorption. Prabhupada translated as absorbed in trance. And he's sitting there, foremost of all sages. He's sitting there. And the other personalities are sitting in the assembly or in that environment. And he's sitting there and he's fully absorbed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the situation. In this particular instance, we find that at this point in time, some of the demigods had appeared, had come, and they had traveled all that way as described through this beautiful place. And they came to the point of where Lord Shiva is, and they offered respectful obeisances by Lord Shiva with folded hands. And this is, of course, headed up by Lord Indra in this particular instance. Lord Shiva, at this point, he was dressed in saffron garments, and he was absorbed in trance, thus appearing to be the foremost of sages. So that's a little bit of the context. In this particular purport, we see that Srila Prabhupada covers a few points. One point that he covers is around the meaning of this Brahmananda, and also how we actually achieve the state of Brahmananda, or how the state of Brahmananda is achieved. And then we see also that Lord Krishna, at least Srila Prabhupada, speaks about the state of Samadhi, and he speaks about how Lord Shiva exhibits these symptoms. An earlier point in this particular paragraph, Srila Prabhupada also speaks about how to become transcendently situated, we need to be above the materialistic conception and also free from beyond the conception of materialistic, Srila Prabhupada says here, it is impossible to conceive the existent name, form, quality and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he is situated beyond the concept of materialistic persons. So this is an important point, right? And we'll speak a little bit about this. So this point is also covered in this purport. And then Srila Prabhupada, towards the latter part of the purport, he goes on to speak about this yoga kaksha and what it means. And he speaks about coming to this point of fixed determination means that we have to come to the level of, or at least to the level of a person known as Manu or Manunam Adyam. And this is a person who's thoughtful. Srila Prabhupada goes on to say that this person has this philosophical tendency. In other words, thoughtful. And also it's not thoughtfulness as a result of mental speculation. Prabhupada concludes in this purport by mentioning that this thoughtfulness of this personality, Srila Prabhupada, at least this thoughtfulness of this personality, Lord Shiva, is of such a deep level, but where it also goes to, it goes to the point of saying, how are we going to save the fallen souls? And then, and Srila Prabhupada then goes on to speak about Lord Shiva in that position of saving the fallen souls in two positions actually. The one position is as the Sampradaya head, or the head of the Sampradaya known as the Rudra Sampradaya, and where he pays special attention in terms of leading living entities towards Lord Krishna, right? And then the other part is actually where he appears as Advaita Acharya, and in the form of Advaita Acharya, he has a significant role in terms of bringing the living entities closer to Lord Krishna. So we'll speak about all of those points as we go on this morning. It won't be too long, but we'll speak about those points. I just want to check time. All right. So this word that Srila Prabhupada speaks about, or at least is mentioned in the purport, and Srila Prabhupada gives attention to it, is adyokshaja, which means beyond our perception. And in one sense, even where we are currently situated, we tend to experience, I won't say tend, we always experience things at the level of sense perception that we can only experience through our senses. And in one sense, the mind is also a sense, and that's spoken about in in Bhagavad Gita. But we can only experience through our senses. It's difficult for us to experience independent of our senses. We have no concept of what that actually means. But here, we are seen to experience the Lord. It is something that requires us to go beyond our senses. Srila Prabhupada, in a lecture in 1971, makes a point in regards to this. He says, Adyokshaja means not to be understood by direct perception of our senses. Aksaja, Shri Shri Radharanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Srila Prabhupada speaks, actually it's a lecture in Vrindavan, 1972. Adhokshaja means not to be understood by direct perception of our senses. Aksaja, we try to understand everything with our senses. We want to see something. We want to touch something. We want to smell something. We want to hear about something. We want to taste something. These are our direct tests. So Krishna, God, cannot be understood by these direct tests. Therefore, he is called Adhokshaja. You cannot understand Krishna. Krishna is there, but because we are not training, we see that he is a stone statue, but he is Krishna. This was in a lecture in Vrindavan in 1972. Sometimes we do hear, and oftentimes we might hear it, from people who are maybe scientists, sometimes atheists. They might come up with this point to say, we can't see God, and therefore God does not exist. Right? And as you know, and this talks directly to the point in terms of we try to perceive with our senses. But we also know, and I won't go into the detail of this because you'll all know this, so I'll skip the detail. But we all know that we have 4 defects. And one of those defects that we have is imperfect senses, right? And for some of us who are older, we understand the impact of that, right? So this morning I was struggling to read Srimad Bhagavatam because the eyes was not working so properly, right? At first it started off with an exercising type of movement some years ago. And I just felt I needed to do something like this. And then I realized that it was because I couldn't read at this point. And many of us who are getting old know this experience, right? We see Prabhu also is now wearing spectacles. He's been wearing spectacles for a few years. Huh? There was a time I knew you that you didn't have spectacles. And we'll all go through this, right? And this year. So Srila Prabhupada, also in a purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita in Adi Leela, Srila Prabhupada makes a point to say, since materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engaged with their imperfect senses, naturally they conclude that the living force is a product of material combination. And we'll get into that right now. The point is, even when we think about this, right? So Prabhupada is making the point in that purport to say that these material sciences, they kind of base everything from the perspective of experiencing with their imperfect senses, right? We right now, also when we conceive or when we see and we experience, we also experiencing through these senses. Now, if one of those senses are not so good or faulty,
then we already know what we perceive in is slightly tainted, is it not? But that's one aspect of perceiving something. The other aspect, in going a little deeper into it, is that we also perceive things according to the filters that we've built in our mind. Right? So as a result of that, we kind of perceive things in a different way. Right? So as an example, I have a deficiency. And this deficiency is called a red-green deficiency. Right? And it means that when these colors are put together, I can't make them out. I can't make them out. So it's not necessarily a physical deficiency as such, but it's a mental interpretation of what's been seen. And of course, you can do things to adjust it, but the point is you get used to it over time. And you become so conditioned that it's a little difficult to see the difference. You know, when I generally go for my license test, eyesight test, it's a bit of a guessing game, right? Because you get red, green, and orange, right? Sorry, mine is orange-green deficiency, right? And for many years, I didn't know it was a deficiency. I thought I just had a problem figuring out colors. Maybe it's true. But I actually went to see an ophthalmologist one day for another reason, and he told me about this, and he showed me a test, etc. So when I go to do a driver's test, then they would put up these colors because they test you because of the robot, right? So if you see me skipping the robot, know why. I'm joking, I can see the positions. All right, so the point is that, it's a bit of a guessing game. So sometimes they might say, so what color is this? Then I'll say orange. And they'll say, are you sure? Then I'll say, okay, green. And for the few years that I've been going, including when I first got my license, I got away with it. Yeah. So that point is important in terms of interpretation. And when we do interpret whatever we perceive, that interpretation is based on our maybe previous experience of where our mind is kind of set or absorbed in. And through that filter, let's call it for argument's sake a filter, we tend to see everything. And over a period of time, that filter might change. And you might see things differently because the filter is changing. What Krishna consciousness does, or at least in the earlier stages of Krishna consciousness, we adopt a philosophy of Lord Chaitanya called Yukta Vairagya. And that means to dovetail everything in Krishna consciousness. But simply what it means is that we kind of adapt in the filter. And we adapt into filter to see whatever we experiencing through the process of dovetailing it in Krishna consciousness, right? It's one of the earlier principles we kind of get. Dovetail your life in Krishna consciousness. Dovetail whatever you're doing. Try and bring it into Krishna consciousness in some ways and experiencing it like that. And that tends to lead us eventually to a point of karma yoga, or where we then start to link up everything that we're doing, that's our work, our activities, etc., in the service of the Lord, right? And as we progress in that, we actually start to get over a period of time, and for everyone this is a relative process, right? Because it happens according to where we at as individuals, right? As we progress, then of course we move to a higher level of intensity. And maybe over a long period of time, maybe over a short period of time, Prabhupada says it can take a second, we start to get to that really intense level of devotion where our minds are firmly fixed on Krishna. And this is the kind of samadhi that's been referred to here by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. And in terms of where Lord Shiva is situated, in that firm conviction, is in that firm position, solid state. And we, maybe not so much. If I can speak about myself, definitely not. Far from that. Actually, I was just thinking yesterday as Mataji was giving class, nice class yesterday, I was just thinking that, they describe this tree, 600 miles, 800 miles, right? 800 high, 600 wide, something to that effect. And I was thinking, sure, that's like, that's not even, it's more, but it's like, imagine you leave Joburg and you come to Durban. You're kind of just driving around the tree, or maybe just one part of the tree. It's a little difficult for us to conceive, right? Really difficult. Imagine that. You're driving and all you see is the side of the tree forever and ever and ever. Yeah, that would be really interesting. But yeah, so some things are not easy for us to conceive where we sit right now. It's not really easy. And even the state of which Lord Shiva is in right now might not be easy. We might, in the very early stages of Krishna consciousness, we might give a thumbs up. and it might be there. And then as we go, we start to realize different things. And then we start to turn around and come around back to that level. And there's various reasons in terms of why that happens. We're not going to go into that. But the point is, we go through this experience. And as we go through this experience, as long as we are focused in terms of what we need to do, we kind of develop our consciousness. And eventually, we would get to that point that's described here by Lord Shiva. And it might seem like inconceivable in a sense, but just think back, for devotees who've been around for a long time, and there's lots of devotees who's been around here for a long time. You yourself, in your own experience, know that initially certain things seem to be unachievable, very difficult. And now, Arjuna Acharya Prabhu is 10 years, you said. 10 years. He's living 10 years in the temple. I remember his first trip to India. And we won't go there. But yeah, that's the point, is that initially it might seem difficult. Even like driving a car, for example. Like difficult. How am I ever going to get this right? And it's such a simple concept. Clutch, petrol. Right? How am I ever going to get it right? And now you do it with your eyes closed. Right? You don't even think about it. So devotional service in one sense is like that. So this point in terms of where we come into, in terms of Lord Shiva, and the focused attention that Lord Shiva has, is something that in one sense it's also unimaginable because it's at such a high level. However, Srimad Bhagavatam is very much focused in terms of bringing us along a journey to bring us to a point of Parikshit Maharaj, right? And if we think about this particular chapter and how this chapter starts, it's an important point for us to keep reminding ourselves of that point. It is so important for us to keep reminding ourselves as we travel through this chapter, where this chapter actually started off. So we are at this particular point where Lord Shiva is experiencing samadhi, but he's in this position, he's sitting, he's got a saffron-colored dhoti, etc., and he's here, fully focused. The sages come and they are offering respects to him. And the sages offering respects to him is only as a result of what has happened earlier in this chapter. And what has happened earlier in this chapter, or triggered this whole thing, right? Triggered this whole thing is the fact that Daksha didn't appreciate Lord Shiva. And Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva. And as a result of that envy, Daksha comes to this particular point of feeling, at least not Daksha, the story encapsulated now here in Bhagavatam comes to this particular point. But it starts at that point. And now we see the demigods, actually what they come in for at this point in time is trying to get back, right, in a good way. Because they know they caused the problem earlier on, right? So now they're trying to get back in a good way. And this is a bit of that recovery that's happening right now. And this enviousness is an important concept for us in Krishna consciousness. It's probably one of the most important concepts for us in Krishna consciousness to get. Here we find Daksha, who's been given some position. He's been given a really top position, isn't it? By Lord Brahma himself. How much better can that get in the material world? He's getting a position by Lord Brahma, chief in charge. Right? Right? And when he gets this position, it goes straight to his head. Right? And in going to his head, he now is doing the service. He finds himself in a bit of a compromise situation. And that compromise situation is he has a son-in-law who's Lord Shiva. And he has this two lines of consideration in regards to Lord Shiva. The one line is Lord Shiva naturally is a great personality. But the other consideration is Lord Shiva is my son-in-law from his perspective. And because of that perspective and the focus and the attention on that particular perspective, we find Daksha in lots and lots of trouble. Right? And this is an important point. Because that only happens as a result of familiarity. And that situation of son-in-law is a situation of familiarity. And so even in our relationships, in devotional service, it's critical for us to understand this concept of familiarity and how sometimes this concept of familiarity can rub itself off, or it can manifest itself, or it can actually be abused to the point of enviousness. So familiarity is there, and it happens in many relationships. It's how we deal with it. But when that familiarity is there, if it lends itself to enviousness, then see what it does. Right? And sometimes, when these things start to happen, the bad things, or when the karma starts to move into motion as a result of starting up something bad, it comes to a level of uncontrollability. You can't control it. It just goes crazy. And we see this in this canto, up to chapter 6 right now. We see how things have just gone out of control, right? And we find ourselves like that in situations sometimes, where we don't know how we got here. We're here right now, but everything's just gone on. I picture it, and Nandarani and myself have conceived this thought in terms of how material life sometimes happens. It's like boulders that are rolling down a hill, and you there, and they start to hit, and you have a choice: duck them, move out of the way, and sometimes you can't. It hits you. It hits you, and that's where certain triggers in material life sometimes happen, and we have no control of the consequences that happen thereafter. And there are moments, of course, where you pause and reflect and can maybe change direction. But that itself can only happen if there is a reflection in yourself, or you build in mechanisms in your own thinking that I need to now pause and reflect. So you pull yourself. Or you might have somebody who is with you, or is your mentor, or is a guide, or is a friend, who can pull you aside, and I'm talking metaphorically, who can pull you aside and say to you, hang on, you're down the wrong path right now, and the boulders are hitting you, and you don't know that. And sometimes when those boulders are hitting you, we might have Superman syndrome, and we might want to punch back, and the ego might want to retaliate. And when those things happen, we should think very carefully about that. Very carefully. But for us to do that, we have to have insight into ourselves. We have to develop a level of insight into ourselves. Because generally, the first thing that we do is to look outside and think, so who's throwing the boulders? Who's throwing the boulders? Who's hitting it at us? What is wrong with them? Why are they doing that? little do we know it's us that have actually let these boulders roll a while back. And right now it's hitting us. Right? So that's that point of contemplation in terms of us actually figuring out, where we at and how are we kind of responsible in terms of what's happening here right now. Okay. So the next part of this purport takes on a really beautiful part, and I'll kind of end with this part, right? Sure. And that is that we hear about Advaita Acharya and how Lord Shiva, he takes on this personality of Advaita Acharya, and he starts to then, in this personality, he takes on this personality to save the souls. And as a result, and of course, as the Acharya of the Sampradaya as well, the Rudra Sampradaya, he specifically takes on that personality. I'm trying to move faster than I plan to because of time, so I'm trying to figure out where do we paraphrase here. But the point is that because of Advaita Acharya, we have this opportunity of Lord Chaitanya appearing. But let's go slightly deeper, right? Just for 5 minutes. And we'll try and squeeze it all into 5 minutes, right? Promise. Right? And that is for us to just reflect a little deeper in terms of why Advaita Acharya does what he does. And in order to understand why Advaita Acharya does what he does, we need to understand why Lord Chaitanya came. And why he does what he does. So, sometimes when we especially go Punim, we have an opportunity to visit the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. If we may be not visiting them in our readings of Chaitanya Charitamrita or other books, Chaitanya Mangala, Chaitanya Bhagavat, we visit the topic of why Lord Chaitanya comes, and then we go into detail in terms of the internal and the external. And we speak about these. But it's very important for us as devotees, and for us as now senior devotees, your seasoned devotees, to actually dive deeper into this topic and to understand more deeply why Lord Chaitanya has come. And as we do that dive deeper into, and there's just so much that we can speak about. But as we dive deeper into that, we also start to dive deeper into why his associates also appear, like Advaita Acharya. And then we understand at a deeper level the depth of why Advaita Acharya does what he does to invoke the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. So it's not just that he went to the Ganges and he offered some flowers, and he offered some arti of sorts, and invoked and asked for Lord Chaitanya to appear. It goes much, much deeper than that. And it goes to the point of where we find there's an absolute need or thirst to save the living entities. And in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's that other debate that exists. That other debate of whether the Lord is bias or not, right? And therefore that whole discussion around the demons versus the demigods, and does the Lord have a bias towards the demigods versus the demons, etc. In one of those purports, I can't remember exactly which one, but in one of those purports, Srila Prabhupada mentions this point. Srila Prabhupada mentions the point, and he starts off, if I can remember it, I'll paraphrase it, to that all the Lord is waiting for us is to turn towards him. And we've heard this often, right? Right? Just turn towards him. Even our super soul. That example is also given. All that the Lord as the super soul is waiting for is for us to turn our attention towards him. 2 birds, Svetashvara Upanishad speaks about it on a tree. Right? I think it's a Svetashvara Upanishad. But in that purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada goes one step further. And Prabhupada said, it's not just that the Lord is waiting for you to turn and see him. But the Lord is, I'm paraphrasing, is agitating so that He can become visible to you, so that you can turn towards Him. He's agitating through the super soul, through the devotees, all of that. And therefore we have a very important role, and absolutely end on this point. We have an important role to be those agitators and to do that service to the Lord or for the Lord, in which we turn the attention of the living entities towards the Lord in everything that we do. And I'm not going to go into that detail, albeit I thought I would. We'll stop at this point. And just in summary, this is such an important chapter for all of us. The chapter is important for various reasons. The one reason that this chapter is very important is that we understand a little better about some of the dangers and the pitfalls in devotional service. And it comes up so aptly in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? It's there to show us that these are the pitfalls. But specifically, the example being used to show this and to give enlightenment to us in terms of these pitfalls that exist, the dangers that exist. The example is Lord Shiva. And the example given of Lord Shiva is how we should try and behave, or how we should see things happening. And be very careful, and I'll end, and be very careful about this thing called enviousness. Because if we are not careful of it, we go down this really treacherous path. And we see it. And in devotional service, it's probably the worst thing that can happen, where we feel ourselves being attacked all the time. Or we feel, and this would be quite interesting, that we need to attack somebody else, because that person has done something to us. And therefore, all weapons will be unleashed. Right? And both sides, it's extremely not nice to be in devotional service. On the one side, when you feel so attacked, you become vulnerable. And that vulnerability can lead to so many things. On the other side, when you are the antagonist, you open yourself up to lots and lots of rolling boulders down the road. You might not have it right now, but those boulders will come down the road. So for all of us, I think all of us, we just need to contemplate, because we all go through this, right? We are in the material world, and that's that point of that filter of materialistic persons. Actually, we should make sure that that filter doesn't come back, or we should make sure we keep clear of that filter. Because when it does come back, that tendency, that material tendency is there, right? We're in the water. So the tendency to be wet is always there if you're in the water, right? So because we're in the material world, the tendency to associate with material nature is there. So we can't avoid it, right? But then these materialistic tendencies pop up from time to time. Depending on our association, depending on a whole lot of things, it pops up from time to time. And when we get into it, remember, all materialism means is I'm doing things for my satisfaction. Right? That's what it is. I'm enjoying for my satisfaction. So even this whole thing about enviousness actually is as a result of me. Right? It's as a result of me. And because it's a result of me, Daksha himself, he wanted a position, because he thought he was, higher than Lord Shiva. Simple as that. I want something for me. Right? So the same thing for us. All right. So thank you very much. I hope that is okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Is there any comments, questions, thoughts?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for that wonderful class. Yes, we can introspect and see that, whatever happens in our lives, and we are the causes of all of that. So it's very difficult to actually acknowledge that, but it's true. And as devotees, we should actually look at it in that way, because in that way we can actually make purification of the heart takes place, and we can make advancement by looking at it like that. And also it helps us to try to become more humble and to try to work on ourselves, where we are at and how we can gain some of these Vaishnava qualities as well. So thank you so much for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
I'm just thinking more on that same point, that we could consider that everything in our experience is due to our past activities, even and especially the difficulties. But on the other hand, those who surrender to Krishna are free from karma. Even pure devotees go through great difficulty. Can you speak a little bit more on that? How Krishna is actually taking charge there, but there are still difficulties.
Yeah, no, definitely. And of course, the example is the Pandavas. That they went through one after another, just one after another. And that's not easy. We in our situation, just one small thing, and you rethink the way, one small thing happens, and then you rethink the way you or what you have to do. It's almost like an obstacle to do it. This morning I was trying to, early this morning, I was trying to blend something before I came to temple. So at around about 4:10 or so, I was trying to blend something, and at that point, of course, the mind is still waking up, and my hand went inside this blender. And that was a big thing for me this morning. I was thinking, should I go for Mangalarti? No, maybe not. It's like just too much. What if I faint because I lost this blood? It is little. But yeah, so these things happen, and then it doesn't make it so easy, and we know that. And depending where we are in our spiritual life, even if you're 20, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, again, it's relative to who you are, right? You could experience, when these difficulties come about, you could experience them in very different ways. Arjuna Acharya Prabhu experiences things very difficult from Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu, right? Could be the same situation, but they experience it absolutely differently. My wife and I were closer than the two of you all, just by the way. I saw you all dancing, and I thought, okay, that's very close. But my wife and I were even closer to each other. We can be in the same situation. We can hear exactly the same thing. We experience it worlds apart, worlds apart. And that also goes for our suffering that we experience. Although theoretically we can say that this is our past that we're experiencing. Number one is, when somebody is going through the suffering, don't ever tell them that. Right? That's the wrong way to go. Right? But number two is that when we are going through that suffering, at least at the initial part, that doesn't come in your head. You're reactionary at that point. You react to it in whatever way you react to it. My finger got caught in this thing, and I thought immediately, what a stupid blender this is, right? That's what I thought. But little did I think, I put my hand there in the first place, right? And even whilst I put my hand in there, I was thinking this could happen. And then it happened. So the level in which, we at the point at which we can appreciate that these things are happening because of my own inadequacies or whatever happened in the past, etc., does not happen immediately. It's relative, Even this whole story, just by the way, of where now the demigods come back, it's not an immediate thing. From when there was destruction to this, it's not some time passed, and then this happened. That's the one point. And so as we really develop in our Krishna consciousness and move towards the goal of pure devotee, we tend to experience things very differently. And until we get to that point, we experience things then very different. And you're right, that when we're at that level, it's not necessarily that we get in the results of our past karma, or we get in the tokens of the results of our past karma, right? It's not necessarily that. It's like the Pandavas. But and that's very different. And that they do, or it's explained, it's out of giving us examples. So giving us examples in terms of how we should be dealing with situations when those situations do happen. So that's the one point. The other point is, if we go a little deeper into it, we start to understand, just as we do about Advaita Acharya and why he comes, that actually these associates of the Lord, they all appear for the pleasure of the Lord. And that pleasure is to facilitate his pastimes. Even though it might be a tough thing to do. Forget the Pandavas. Imagine somebody like Jai and Vijay. Well, take on the guise of demons. And they have to physically be abusive, and in other ways, be abusive to the Lord and his devotees. Imagine Hiranyakashipu. He's actually, right? We think of him and we think, Hectico, right? But actually, Hiranyakashipu is in the previous life, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were Jai and Vijay. And they took on this role. Because no one else can do it, to be honest with you, right? But they took on this role because they knew it was something that would give pleasure and satisfaction to the Lord. But besides all of that, if you really think a little more into it, it's as a result, the same thing as Advaita Acharya, is that whole example has become the impetus, has become the inspiration for us to be devotees. How's that? That actually, as bad as it was, it actually stimulates us to become better devotees. How's that? Even them in a negative position, so-called, right? Negative position, it stimulates devotion in us. Okay, okay. Is that okay?
Okay. Thanks for your class and for also pointing out that we have different perspectives. And that's in general for every single person. But just to tie up on the note that you were talking, I thought of Srila Prabhupada, to your point about a pure devotee, about how he went through such difficulty. But when he went through it, it was just what he needed to do. He didn't think, he didn't blame it on anyone, or he didn't do anything. He just took it on as difficulties in the service of the Lord. And that's such a transcendental mood to have. And it's about their glory actually expanding in that way. But one of the words that I thought was interesting that you used was the word, we can be agitators. And I always look at the word agitate as a negative word, like, you're agitating me. But I think what you were trying to say was we can agitate in a positive way, because agitating is not necessarily a negative thing.
It means to shake it up a bit.
You can just shake it up and do something. But the last point I wanted to actually comment on is about the imperfect senses. And there's a terminology where they say in South Africa, you're picking up stompies. I think that went through my mind because we can't actually even understand what's going on outside. Through a wall, we don't know. Yet, we want to know. At least for myself, I can say, I kind of want to know what's going on around me. And so we try to figure it out and speculate. And we pick up stompies. And I just wanted to make that comment.
I actually use that quite a lot. And it's so important for us not to do that. The term is simply we speculating. We see a small bit of something and then we think, we try and come to the solution of what it actually is. You see, I see Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu and Arjuna Acharya Prabhu dancing here, arm in arm. And then I speculate further in terms of how deep that relationship might be, this, that, all of those kind of things, right? In a nice way, of course, right? And that, in one sense, is a recipe for disaster. Sometimes these things don't really and should not really involve us. But we've become quite a society of opinion making. And we tend to want to have an opinion on everything. Anything. That's just the way, this is the information age, to be honest with you. And so we are there. We take a little bit of information and we make things out of it, etc. But there's a big danger in that. And that's, one of the reasons this word speculation comes up so much, even here, in terms of Lord Shiva's position. So do ourselves a favor, just really do ourselves a favor. And give people at least that amount of respect to query from them. If it means so much to you to know why these two devotees are so close, I'm not making a big deal out of it. I'm just using it as an example, right? Or whatever, of why the devotees did something or somebody did something. Do yourself a favor. If it means so much for you to know about it, if it really means that much for you to know about it, then take the time to hear from the devotee or from the person what it is and get the detail from them if it means so much to you. If it really doesn't mean so much to you but you want to be entertained, then do something else. Don't be entertained like that, because at the end of the day it just becomes totally destructive. And sometimes I see this, I'll end up on this point, sorry. I see this, is that and I'm sure you'll all see this, is that we end up in a state because of all of this. This one saying this, that one saying that, I don't know, but I'm thinking, etc., etc. We end up in a state of paranoia. Really? Then you become fearful of all situations. Right? Yeah. And then the question is, how surrendered are we to Krishna? Because if you actually surrendered to Krishna, then what? Then Sarvadharma Parityajya. Then they will fear nothing. Actually, we'll fear nothing, to be honest with you. And we won't even fear for our own reputation. Or we won't fear that we're going to lose this or that or whatever it is. And that's an important point. Otherwise, you end up in a state of so-called paranoia. Not to the nth degree of what paranoia means, but to a certain small level of it, where you keep second-guessing everyone. Everyone you second-guessing. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu puts his spectacles on, then I'm second-guessing him. Why is he doing that? Does he have an issue with me? Does he have an issue with me? Why you did that, bro? What? Why you did that? Yeah, why you put it on? Okay, thanks. Right. Now thanks. That's important. So I know this now, right? Because when you put that glass spectacles on, you look authoritative, Prabhu. It's like you almost want to chastise me. I'm joking. I'm just giving an example. This is how the mind can speculate. How the mind can become paranoid about things which is useless. It's useless. We could actually be doing other things. It is useless. Absolutely useless. Just spend that time, if you really have that time, spend that time talking to another devotee. Hear from them. Instead of sitting in your small little corner, even if it's in your mind, sitting in your small little corner, really small little corner, and thinking the worst things about yourself and maybe about others. But generally it starts with yourself. Okie dokie. Can we stop there? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Radha Radhanath ki jai. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you, bro. Sure. I hope that is okay. You mustn't say it. Right? I'm sorry I picked on you. These glasses intimidate me. I'm joking. It's getting bad. We couldn't see. Yeah. Yeah, it's off.